What is this thing called love? It's this question that just pulses under so much music, isn't it? A puzzle we keep trying to figure out.
Definitely. And, few songwriters tackled its complexities with
Hmm.
the kind of, well, the sheer sophistication and wit of Cole Porter.
Exactly. His lyrics, they have this amazing polish, this worldly feel, often like a playful wink, but also this deep understanding of how people connect.
Or maybe how they don't connect sometimes. He was brilliant at flipping those love cliches around.
Right. And that's exactly what we're getting into in this deep dive. We're going way back to the very beginning, the experiences that really shaped his unique voice.
Yeah, we're focusing just on chapter one of this really interesting dissertation that one of you shared with us.
Yeah.
It digs into Cole Porter's early life, those initial influences.
So our mission here is to, unpack these foundational bits. How did his childhood, his education, his early relationships, how did all that feed into his songwriting, especially his first attempts at writing about, well, love?
And we know you want to get the insights quickly but thoroughly. So we've really tried to boil this chapter down to the most crucial takeaways for you.
Okay, let's dive in then, starting with someone who was clearly um, hugely important, his mother, Kate Porter. The chapter really paints her as the central figure.
Oh, absolutely central. Kate Porter was, well, she was his unwavering champion when it came to music. Right from the start, she encouraged that desire to compose.
And it wasn't just like moral support, was it?
No, not at all. She actually paid to publish his first piece, the Bobolink Waltz, even though, it wasn't really his later style at all.
Yeah.
But that kind of early validation, that financial backing, it must build such a foundation of confidence for him.
That's a really good point. It's tangible support. And I love that little story about her making piano practice fun by satirizing popular songs.
Yeah, that's charming, isn't it?
It really paints a picture. And you have to wonder, could that early exposure to musical humor, that sort of lighthearted twisting of tunes, could that have influenced his own wit, his satirical edge later on?
It seems pretty likely, doesn't it? That playful, almost irreverent approach to music early on. It could very well have planted the seeds for his own clever, often ironic style. You can sort of imagine him soaking that up.
It's quite a contrast, though, with his grandfather. The chapter mentions he disapproved, saw music as a sissified pursuit.
Yes. Talk about mixed messages in the home.
Right.
That contrast probably created a kind of tension for young Cole. You've got this powerful support from his mother, and then this skepticism, maybe, from his grandfather or society. Navigating that might have made him more resilient.
Or more determined, perhaps.
Could be. Determined to prove music was worthwhile.
And the chapter mentions his father was less present, but Kate fostered Cole's interest in theater with Chicago.
Yes, she really stepped in there.
And the irony is his father apparently had his own artistic side, a love for romantic poetry.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Even if the father wasn't a strong presence, that underlying artistic interest, maybe it was just in the air. It suggests, an appreciation for the arts was there in his upbringing, even if it came through Kate more directly.
Okay, so moving on from home life, Kate sends him to Worcester Academy. A big step.
A real turning point, yes.
Bah.
A break from childhood. And it sounds like this is when Cole started becoming a bit more guarded about his background.
Yeah, downplaying his roots.
Worcester had this emphasis on the classics, a different world. And his reticence, it suggests maybe he was forging a new identity there, trying to fit into this more sophisticated setting. Pretty normal for kids going off to school, I suppose.
But Worcester is where he met Dr. Daniel Webster Abercrombie, headmaster, Greek teacher. Sounds pretty pivotal.
Hugely pivotal, especially for his artistic development. Abercrombie's teaching, particularly on Homer and the Greek poets, really opened Cole's eyes to the connection between meter.
There's rhythm in the poetry.
Exactly. The rhythmic pattern and the verse, the lines themselves.
And that awareness, how rhythm and language dance together in poetry, that directly fed into his songwriting, right?
Absolutely. The chapter stresses this. It led him to really examine the unity between the music and the words.
Which became such a Porter hallmark.
Precisely. Abercrombie's classical teaching gave him this understanding of structure, of rhythm. Think of it like the architecture of the language. It gave him a framework for crafting those incredibly sophisticated lyrics later, making sure they weren't just tacked onto the music.
Yeah, I see. So the dissertation points out he had this amazing combination. Trained musician and a talent for lyrics.
That's a powerful combo. It meant he wasn't just, setting words to music or finding music for words. He could think about both together right from the start, more integrated.
And his process was varied, sometimes starting with just a title or a phrase.
Apparently so. He'd get an idea, maybe a hook, write a verse, then set it to music. Which is kind of different from those older ballads, the ones from the 20s and 30s.
How so?
Well, those often told a more straightforward story, verse after verse, same chorus. Porter, even early on, seemed more about capturing a mood, an idea, experimenting with song structure.
Interesting. And then with records and radio taking off, publishers wanted love songs, right? Strong melodies.
Yeah, commercial pressures. The demand for catchy, marketable love songs was huge. It definitely shaped the music scene.
But Porter managed to work within that.
That was his genius, wasn't it? He navigated those commercial needs, but still injected his own wit, his sophistication, his unconventional takes. He found a way to be himself, even with those restrictions.
The chapter also mentions his lyrics evolving from risque school songs.
Wish we could hear those.
Right, all the way to that sophisticated ennui of his later stuff. That's quite a journey.
It shows him growing up, experiencing different things. Those early naughty school songs probably sharpened his skill with innuendo, double meanings, stuff that came out later in more subtle ways. He was trying on different voices.
Okay, now this next part in the chapter is, well, it's quite delicate. It talks about the all-male environment at Worcester.
Yes, the dissertation brings this up. That setting, and then later Yale, which was similar, it suggests these environments might have influenced his understanding of relationships, of desire.
How so?
Well, the idea is that these intense, close friendships in a single-sex school could have broadened his perspective on human connection generally.
And it mentions Dr. Abercrombie again, discussing Greek texts, possibly including references to same-sex relationships, since they are present in classical literature.
It's raised as a possibility. Given the context of Greek literature and culture, those themes were there. The chapter suggests that exposure to these texts in that specific social setting might have contributed to a wider awareness of different kinds of affection, of attraction.
Then the chapter makes a more direct link. It mentions his close friendships with boys who had certain tendencies, and says this quote, would surely have influenced both the sexual preferences he pursued throughout his adult life and his compositions, with their sexual innuendos and paradoxical allusions.
Right. It's suggesting a connection between his personal life, those early relationships, and the themes you find in his lyrics. The hints of unconventional desire, the subtle stuff, that these experiences might have shaped his artistic viewpoint.
It even brings in Alec Waugh's book, Public School Life, about attraction developing in boarding schools.
Yeah, that adds a bit of broader social context for that era. Waugh's observations on the dynamics in those all-male schools, how close bonds or attractions could form. It gives a perspective on how those specific social structures might shape experiences.
And it notes his lifelong friendships with Monty Woolley and Leonard Hanna, who were openly homosexual.
Those enduring friendships are significant. It suggests he moved in, or at least was very comfortable in, a circle that was open and accepting of different identities. These relationships likely broadened his understanding too.
Okay, let's shift gears to Yale. But first, that European tour his grandfather gave him before college.
Ah, yes. What an experience that must have been.
The start of his love for travel, especially Paris. You can really see that Parisian flair later on.
Oh, absolutely formative. That exposure to Europe, new cultures.
Yeah.
And Paris just clicked with him. It became this huge source of inspiration, part of his whole sophisticated image later.
So he gets to Yale in 1909, and his music basically makes him instantly popular, even with his mother's outlandish clothing choices.
Huh. Yes, apparently the clothes were something else. But his musical talent, that was his social key at Yale. It opened all the doors, let him fit in everywhere. Music spoke louder than the wardrobe, thankfully.
He even brought his own piano and was constantly writing songs for student groups, alumni.
Yeah, an upright piano. And he was incredibly prolific, writing for the Dramatic Association, all sorts of things. It's amazing, especially since the chapter notes his poor scholastic performance.
Right. Tactfully put.
Yale was clearly where he honed his craft, writing, performing for different crowds. That was invaluable experience. Graduating despite the grades just shows where his real focus was. It was all about the music.
It mentions the T&B course, the Pundits Club. So he was engaging intellectually, too.
Seems so. While music was primary, these involvements probably helped his wider development, his grasp of language, wit, all feeding back into the lyrics, you'd imagine, sharpening his communication skills.
And he wasn't just writing for formal things. He was playing in social clubs. His football songs were big hits.
Yeah, Yale classics, apparently. Performing in those casual settings let him test materials, see what landed, work on his timing.
Yeah.
The football songs show he could tap into what his audience, his community, cared about, learning what works.
And between 1911 and 1913, he wrote 4 musical comedies. Cora and the villain still pursued her, The Pot of Gold, The Kaleidoscope.
Incredible output for a college student, isn't it?
Even if the plots were thin, the chapter says they had some of his best early songs.
Exactly. They were his training ground,
Yeah.
experimenting with styles, learning about theater, basically workshopping his talent live on stage.
And being in the glee club, banjo, mandolin clubs, doing concerts and tours, that helped his timing and mimicry.
For sure. Those performance experiences would hone his musicality, how to work with others, connect with an audience. Timing is crucial for his kind of intricate songs, and mimicry helps a songwriter absorb different styles.
We even have the script for The Pot of Gold and lyrics for My Little Salvation Army Queen.
Yeah, the chapter shares some of that, and
Yeah.
you can hear the influences, right? Gilbert and Sullivan, Viennese operetta, early Broadway. It's all kind of mixed together.
It's like seeing the ingredients before the final dish.
Exactly. He's finding his voice, blending these traditions. It's fascinating to see that early stage.
And the Gilbert and Sullivan influence seems huge. Sir Arthur Sullivan's music, but especially Sir William Gilbert's lyrics. That pointed humor, the wit.
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Especially for Porter's patter songs, those really fast, wordy ones, and his list songs.
Like, I'm the very model of a modern major general from Pirates of Penzance. The chapter connects that directly to Porter's You're the Top.
You can see the direct line, can't you? That clever wordplay, the intricate rhymes, the witty social commentary. Gilbert's rapid-fire lists clearly struck a chord. That linguistic juggling.
And it wasn't just the structure, but the playful use of words generally. The chapter gives later examples like, You're a rose, your inferno's Dante, or he said my bronchial tubes were entrancing.
Those show his natural creativity with language. Pushing boundaries, putting unexpected images together, being surprising. Even early on, he had that quirky wordplay.
So finally, the chapter sketches out the musical theater scene around 1913, operettas versus musical comedies.
Right. Operettas, more romantic imaginary places, Viennese waltzes, musical comedies, contemporary settings, everyday language, Tin Pan Alley sounds.
And operettas were still big then.
They were dominant, yeah, mostly European imports. But World War I was about to change things. It restricted those European shows, which opened the door for American talent.
Creating space for people like Porter.
Exactly. And alongside that, you had vaudeville, burlesque, reviews becoming more popular. The whole entertainment world was
A
shifting.
dynamic scene.
Very dynamic, which likely exposed Porter to a whole range of styles.
The chapter mentions Jerome Kern moving towards a more American sound, and P.G. Wodehouse writing lyrics, also influenced by Gilbert and Sullivan.
Yeah, it all connects. You see this distinctly American voice emerging in musical theater, drawing on tradition but making it later, more modern, more colloquial. Porter fits right into that emerging picture.
And it brings us back to Gilbert's wit and Sullivan making the music serve the lyrics. It feels like we've covered the key ground from this first chapter now.
I think so. These early influences, his mother's support, the classical education, the musical traditions he absorbed, his performance experiences, they all laid the groundwork for the unique artist Cole Porter became. This chapter really sets that scene beautifully.
So wrapping up what we've learned just from this chapter 1 deep dive,
Hmm.
you have Kate, his mother, as this incredibly supportive force.
Huh?
You have Worcester Academy and Dr. Abercrombie giving him this academic foundation, that link between meter and verse.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the clear early development of his musical and lyrical talent, even in those college shows. And the chapter also brings in those potential early influences on his personal life, the all-male environments, his friendships, and how that might connect to his leader writing.
And looking at these roots, these foundations from chapter 1, it really gives you context. For you listening, if you love those aha moments, understanding where he came from helps you appreciate the later stuff so much more, doesn't it? You see the journey.
Absolutely. And this is just chapter 1. We'll definitely revisit Porter in future deep dives, look at later chapters, see how these early experiences played out in his big hits and his career overall.
But this first chapter, it's a really valuable look at the making of the artist. Sets the stage perfectly for everything that followed. It's great to see where it all kicked off.
So here's a final thought for you, just based on this first chapter's exploration.
Yeah.
Think about your own early influences, the people, the experiences that shaped you, that set you on your path. How might those early forces still be playing out, maybe subtly woven into what you do now, or just how you see the world? Something to maybe mull over as we finish this look at Cole Porter's beginnings.